The final number was 1.24%. We are aware of 3 staff retirements. So we have 1 teacher retiring, 1 paraprofessional, and 1 maintenance mechanic. We know what our final state aid is. But what we don't know is some of our medical insurance, what it will be January to June. We're only given rates for the calendar year, so we won't know what the rate increases will be for January to June of 2025. The district is currently in the middle of some Child Victims Act litigation, so we always have to keep an eye on that and see where that winds up and what type of disposition of those cases occur. And then we're always looking at the long-term future of the LIPA main power plant and the LIPA peaker plant. So now the Board of Education met several times to discuss the budget, as did the Facilities and Finance Committee. One of the biggest things that they consider each year is what construction is deemed necessary for the upcoming year. So there were 11 items identified, but only 4 were affordable. First that we'll be doing is demo of the high school portable, which is no longer habitable. So that's a demolition and a paving of the space underneath. We have a renovation of the high school orchestra room. We have some renovations of the elementary school pool, and continuing to our roofing project. We've roofed pretty much all of the high school, middle school. We've re-roofed about half to 3/4 of the elementary school. We still need to look at Tech Ed, Spring Street, and the second half of the elementary school. So overall, we identified those 4 projects totaling $1 million for next year. Now, as I mentioned, we did have some reductions. The reductions not for budget reasons, but enrollment reasons. We're looking at a reduction of 3.6 teacher positions. Now, none of those amounted to full-time positions. They're rather portions of different staff's positions, and I don't say that lighthearted. For any reduction for any staff member is tough, but someone may be reduced from 100% to 80%, meaning from 5 classes to 4, and that we had overall reductions of 3.6. If you could go to page 6. Okay, so this is our budget by component. Our administrative component, pretty much the same at 10%. Our capital component, decreasing slightly. We made a budget decision, especially with the state aid situation, to reduce our allocation from 1.4 to $1 million. So as a result, our percentage goes down from 10.3 to 9.65. And then we have our program component, which is our key instructional piece, increasing from 79.7 to 80.26. Next slide, please. Okay. Yep, gotcha. So this is just a breakdown by category. 77% of our budget, similar to other school districts, is made up of salaries and benefits. So that's our first 2 lines. Then transportation, running all routes. We have BOCES all the way through. Once you take into account collective bargaining agreements, state regulations, and state mandates, probably of this whole budget, probably only about 4% is controllable. We can control what we spend on supplies, we can control what we spend on equipment, but overall things wear out or things need to be replaced. Most of the other things... So
basically those 6 first items you have no control over.
Well, the transportation, well, right now, that would take, yes. For the most part, they're not. So BOCES are services that we contract out for that we can't provide at Port Jeff. Contractual that's contracts we sign with vendors to do things like repairs and maintenance. Interfund transfer is just moving money to the school lunch fund, or the biggest component there is the $1 million for capital. So we could control the capital as well, but if we don't continue to replace and upgrade our schools, they fall into disrepair, and it becomes more expensive later on. But yes, really, like, the supplies are a little bit, we can move around. We really can't do anything with the testing or tuition or the liability insurance or the debt service. It's the equipment, like I said, the supplies, and a little bit of the textbooks, but for the most case, we're receiving aid on those textbooks, so we always make sure to purchase a minimum amount to be eligible for the maximum aid.
Is there any opportunity, I don't know how school districts work. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how the districts, I know you are government entities unto yourself. Is there any opportunity for I'll call it inter-district cooperation? So in other words, maybe, I know, does everybody have a different healthcare? Is there an opportunity for districts to pull together, maybe get a cheaper, I don't know.
I would say about 95% of the districts all use the same plan.
There you go. Okay.
And then 5% are self-insured,
Okay.
which is always a risk. Where possible, we try and do ride shares with our transportation. Where possible, we will combine sports teams if there's a shortage in numbers. What's hard to do is combine staff because you have the traveling issue and the time.
That I know probably wouldn't work in a lot of instances.
Next slide, please. So this is our staffing chart. The change is really budget to budget, but when I talk about the 3.6, it's actual, because we budget to hire a certain amount of people, but then due to certain state mandates like E&L staffing, English as a second language staffing, or special ed staffing, that we may have to go over and above budget. So the actual number of 109.4, which is the first line, or the bottom line of 240.15, that's what we actually had in staffing seats as of December. So that's what we budget off of, and that's what we also look to when we're having to make reductions in any way. So our really biggest change is in the teaching ranks. Most of the other ranks have been pretty solid for the past number of years. And the teacher staffing goes, I said two things affect it: enrollment, and at the high school, middle school, student interest. So certain electives, if students sign up for it, we run it. If there's an elective out there that does not have a lot of student interest, we will not run that, and then therefore that teacher may be reduced from a whole to 80% or 60%. Next slide, please. Just real quick, we budget by department. And for instance, like business administrator, that is my entire office and staff. That's our contractual obligations, our supply obligations, our salary obligations. The biggest increases there, operation of maintenance in the plant. That's mainly our utilities, which, you know, between the electric and the oil and the fuel, keep increasing. Maintenance of the plant, we have to keep up with certain contractual maintenance contracts, as well as, you know, I joke a little bit, the tissues and the toilet paper can only get so rough before we have to stick with what we have. We have our unallocated insurance. That's really our liability insurance, everything from auto to burner liability to general liability. Next slide. So that's our kind of back office. This is our instructional grouping. But you see most of our increases come in the regular school, so that's our general ed program, and then some bigger ones in our special ed department. And that's mandated by the meetings that take place, the CSE meetings that take place every year, where the students, parents, and advocates get together and agree upon services for their students in the upcoming year. Dropping down, you'll see a reduction in interscholastic athletics. That's really sports that we're no longer running due to the lack of student interest, such as softball or field hockey. Next slide, please. This is the different transportation lines and our various benefit lines. The health insurance, that's the biggest increase. As I mentioned, it's about 10% overall. We have to factor in, you know, who's on single, who's on family, who declines the insurance, many different calculations due to come up with that number. That's our biggest exposure. And then we have our debt service, which is, while we have no regular construction debt on our books currently, we're at zero. We do have a energy performance bond on our books that we're in the process of halfway paid off. So those are, that other debt is our EPC payments for the year. Transfer to other funds, that's $1 million for our capital, $30,000 for our school lunch, and $35,000 for our federal funds. So overall, a budget increase, as I said, of $950,000 and 2.2%. Next slide. So that was a lot of the expenses. This is how we pay for it. This is one of the things I had to update today. We have our starting budget of $48 million. We have our state aid, which at first was a $1.3 million reduction. Now it's a $146,000 increase. Why is it an increase if we're getting the same amount as last year? Because some of our other aids from the state went up slightly based upon the latest calculation. Our building aid and our BOCES aid. But our foundation aid was just, we were given exactly what we were to the dollar, what we were given last year. Then we have our, what I call our local revenues. We have tuition. That's students from outside the district that attend our programs. We used to have quite a large number from Mount Sinai. That number has gone down as Mount Sinai has created its own program. We have our various rentals. So we have our rental of Spring Street. We have our rental of the elementary to BOCES. And then just a general rental if we were to rent out the auditorium for a one-use occasion. We have our different pilots, so those are payments in lieu of taxes. That means they're not subject to our normal tax rate. They're subject to a defined schedule that they work out with either the town of Brookhaven or the Suffolk County IDA. We have the peaker plant at $1.7 million. That increases by inflation each year. We have the shipyard, and I also included here the years that the agreement expires. That's the last year that the agreement's in effect. So we have the shipyard, we have Cappies, we have Overbay, and we have the Lobster House. As you can see, there are different numbers there. When the shipyard first came out, it was a very, what we thought, a lucrative payment schedule. We discussed it at length with the town of Brookhaven, and as you can see by some of the numbers, they were much more responsive in the future of balancing out the needs of the district when offering an IDA payment plan. We have the use of TRS reserve. That's zero. That was at $950,000 as of Friday. That was how we were going to balance the budget. We have our ERS reserve, our compensated absence reserve, our undesignated 4% reserve, and our workers' comp. So if you take our starting budget A, subtract out the state aid, and subtract out our local revenue, we're left with the tax levy of $39.8 million, which is a 1.24% increase. Next slide. So I have a rolling model that I've been using for a while to help forecast the impact, not just of the tax levy percent, but the overall tax rate. I'm factoring in the glide path, so the yellow is the upcoming school year. It has those numbers I just discussed, but it shows our tax rate going from approximately, and this is an approximation because the assessed value and the numbers aren't really computed by the town of Brookhaven until October, going from 190 to 201. Now, if you skip down a little bit further, you can see the tax rate increase is 11%. That's due to the 10.99. That's due to the glide path, the 7.5% reduction to the LIPA assessed value plus the 1.24% increase in our tax levy. Next slide. Now, if you go down here, I don't like to say what the average increase is. So instead, I take 6 different assessed values throughout the village and put them up, and so you can see the different impacts. 12,500 assessed value is a very high-end home in Belterre, while the 1,600 would be one of the very small historic homes in the President Streets or locally. And a 5,000 assessed value would be a home in Jefferson Landing. So just to give like a basis of what those neighborhoods look like and what the increases may look like year to year. Next slide. So we just summarized the capital projects. These are complete for reference. Next slide. And then here we try to give a little information. Projects that are complete, projects that were canceled. So we canceled the district-wide paving in 21-22 because the price far exceeded our budget. And as is this bipolar ionization, which was a hot topic during COVID, we were looking into it and the state said it doesn't work, so we're not giving aid on it. So we canceled those. Now, when a project is canceled, or if there's surplus left over, that money goes back to the source. So if you did a bond, it goes back to paying off the bond. If you got the money from capital reserves, it goes back into the capital reserve. And if you got it from the general fund, it goes back into the general fund as a miscellaneous revenue and eventually becomes part of fund balance and reserves. 22-23, we're working on these. The middle school retaining wall and drainage, we bid several times. to be able to fit it under the budget. And that'll be taking place this summer. The high school football bleachers as well. The elementary school pool repair, and the high school roofing. So those three, one from use of the capital reserve, the other three from the general fund. Three are underway, the fourth is complete. Getting down to 23, 24, we have projects under review. I mean, it's been at the state for 8-9 months, and we're waiting for approval before we can go out to bid. So the ADA bathrooms in the elementary, which will be in the gym cafeteria area, that's still under state review. The rear boundary fence for security, that's complete. The high school, middle school stop arm booth, the Board of Ed and administration decided to cancel that project. The high school, middle school, family and consumer science remodel is under review, as is phase 1 of the window replacements. Next slide. The capital projects, as I mentioned earlier, for this upcoming year: demo the portable, renovate the orchestra room, renovate the elementary school pool, and continue with sections of replacement roofing. Now, the reason we're doing it in sections rather than a grand project is, one, financing. Two, is that when these roofs, they have about a life of 25 years to 30 years. When they're up again, we don't want them all due at the same time. So by spacing them out over 10 years, hopefully in 25 years, they'll be able to go through a similar cycle rather than have it do it all at once. Next slide. The contingency budget. So a contingency budget is what happens if the budget was to fail. Next slide. So the board has two options when a budget fails. It can go right to contingency, or it can decide to put up a second budget. They can put up the same budget, they can put up a modified budget. If that budget fails a second time, you're right to contingency. Now, in the contingency, the tax levy cannot increase from the prior year. The administrative component percent cannot go up from the preceding year. You're not allowed to buy new equipment, no public use of the buildings or grounds where the district incurs a cost, no non-essential maintenance, no capital expenditures, so no transfer to the capital fund. And then consultant review services are also off the chart. So next, so what would we have to do? We would cut, oops, still on that slide. All right, 178,000 of equipment would be not purchased. We'd eliminate the public relations service. We wouldn't do the $1 million in capital projects, and we'd have to remove $135,000 from the administrative section. Overall, it would be a tax levy reduction from what we're proposing of $512,000. Next slide. So this just breaks this out. This is the school.
Question.
Sure.
On contingency budget, is transportation affected?
No, it is not.
Okay.
So this is the 6-day notice, which will be going out in the near future. This just breaks it down by what the budget is, the increase to the levy, the percentages that we all mentioned, permissible exclusions, and then the administrative component. So it's both what this year is, what next year is proposed, and what the contingency would look like. Next slide. So now I know I'm getting to the end. So the budget vote is on May 21st. It's, as always, in the high school cafeteria. The eligibility requirements are to be a citizen, 18 years or older, a resident of Port Jeff School District for 30 days prior to the vote. There'll be Proposition 1 for the $48 million budget, and then we have 3 petitions for trustees for 3 open seats. Next slide. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Lester. Sorry about the technology snafu up front, but I think it worked out.
Yeah, fine.
Good. So I do have a question, and it's related to I have a couple of questions. So the first one was, you mentioned that there were 3 teacher retirements coming up this year?
No, there were 3 staff. So it's 1 teacher, 1 para, and 1 maintenance mechanic. So
Okay.
they're in 3 different bargaining units.
And just curious, are you replacing them, or will that be an attritional issue?
We've discussed it. Those 3 are replaced. So the maintenance mechanic is definitely needed. The paraprofessionals, that's always based upon the needs we have based on the CSE meetings. So whatever those require, we are budgeting 52 paraprofessionals. We won't know that number actually until school starts. And as far as the teacher, it was a guidance counselor. So we felt that position to be very valuable, and they're going to replace that position.
I see. Okay. So yes, across basically,
Yes, but we'll see savings in salaries on all three.
I see. And then, with regard to the case, and I know you can't speak about litigation publicly, whatever, but is it anticipated that this will come to fruition at some point in the very near future?
I'm trying to think what I'm allowed to say. So there are 7 cases, everyone knows that. So it's at the speed that either it goes to trial or a settlement is made. Things were very clogged up in the courts, but it seems to be speeding up at this point. But we don't have, by any means, trial dates for 7 different cases.
Okay, and thank you. And then my third question for now is just, there was, I don't know if I missed it, I might have. If you talked about that special reserve number, do you put that in this budget?
What do you mean by the special reserve?
There's some, and maybe I'm,
There's the 4% reserve, which is the undesignated, which you're allowed to spend on any type of topic. So they call it undesignated, meaning it's not designated for a specific purpose.
that's
So we have $1.8 million in it, very close to the 4%. We have that kind of open as a real emergency fund. And then we have other reserves out there. But if anyone has questions, I, a month ago, posted a very detailed summary on our website of what's in each individual reserve, what's the purpose, what's been the activity for the past 10 years. And if anyone has any questions on that, feel free to email me or call me, and we can explain that.
is that number built into this presentation?
Just what we're using as part of the budget, not the grand totals.
Okay,
But they're both listed on our website as part of the financials, and then we have a separate document that says Port Jefferson Reserve Plan.
okay, I'll take a look at your website.
Sure, it's in the business office section.
Okay, it's not an easy snapshot answer, then I take it, right?
Well, there's approximately 5 or 6 different reserves. So you have workers' compensation. So we're self-funded up to a certain point. We have compensated absence, which is to pay for people's sick and vacation time that they have on the books. We have an unemployment insurance, which is for paying unemployment claims. We have an ERS reserve and a TRS reserve. ERS is for two different types. So you have the teachers union and the civil service
Retirement,
unions.
right.
Right. So they're both to pay when there's big spikes in the retirement system. And I believe, and we have the capital reserve, which is, it's voted upon the public to create it, and then it's voted to use it. So we have one right now with approximately, our capital reserve is $3.1 million. We use that to do different capital projects, and the way we fund it is when we have a surplus at the end of a given year, the board will pass a motion to fund that reserve up to a certain point. I believe it's no more than $1.5 million can go into it in a given year. So those are the reserves we have,
So there are 5.
plus the 4% reserve, the undesignated 4% reserve.
Okay. All right, those are the questions I have right now. Does anyone else have a question for the district?
So I was able to hear a presentation by Longwood School District, and the capital projects that they were going out to bond for, they were saying that they were going to get about 74% state aid. I just wanted to, that perked my ears up, and just wanted to know,
Right.
is that based on needs, demographics?
So it's based upon needs and demographics. A big portion is the consumer wealth ratio, which is a combination of household income and house value. Another indicator that goes into it is the percentage of students on free and reduced lunch. So yes, Longwood is a higher needs district and gets about 75. We get between 24 and 25% aid on our projects. Now that aid is given over the life of the project. So generally, that aid is reimbursed once you finish the project and submits the proper documentation over 15 years. So you receive 15 years of payments. So that's why you'll see different districts' building aid go up and down, because after 15 years, a project will drop off. So, or a big one may jump on. So it's very important to keep an eye on that you don't fall off a cliff or that you see it coming. So we're always trying to get our projects, once they're completed, the paperwork back up to the state so we can get that on the rolls and, get that income flowing.
Thank you. It is frustrating for us as a school district because some of those larger high-need districts are getting the 75 cents on the dollar and the taxpayers are only picking up 25% on that. So, for us, it's a much less of a ratio and then we're not getting the state aid reimbursement. So
Yeah.
it's more challenging for districts like ours to have improvements on larger scale without that state aid coming back.
And some districts are as high as 90%.
So in the capital projects, you want to touch upon what the high school football bleachers, you want to touch upon that and
Right.
what's involved with that?
Sure. So it was a combination of the bleachers and press box. The press box wasn't up to code, and the bleachers were getting older, rusting, and not ADA accessible. So we're actually going to be removing the bleachers. We've modified the existing press box, and it's actually less seats than the prior seating. We estimated on both what we can afford and factored in the reduced amount of students. So we're leaving the concrete pad, and we're going to be putting new bleachers, as I said, with a setback and ADA accessibility.
And they were the initial bids came in higher than anticipated when the board made that decision. So what they had to do was rebid it several times with several different options. And one of the options the board actually came to was actually reusing the press box so that they could put the project within budget. So they made a smaller bleacher section and then they reused the press box to just bring it up to code. So that's like refabricated with the proper hatch, latch, and ladder and things like that. So that's the change the board made when those projects came back to bid. And I'm sure much like the village, things go up and what you anticipate you're going to spend on the project, all of a sudden the bids come in and they're much higher than what you anticipate, and then the board has to make those adjustments about what they're willing to do and stuff.
Just one thing. Is there, and you brought it up, we're in a declining enrollment. It's island-wide. It's affecting colleges and universities. Is there any working group going on to maybe bring the community in and talk about what are we doing as a district as our enrollment drops, and how do we maintain our services so they're affordable to everyone?
So that was a discussion at the last few Board of Education meetings from residents and from the board to decide about what kind of group they would like to see moving forward, whether it was a community forum, whether it was a committee. So that is under review with the Board of Education. I know that they were anxious to get through this budget cycle with obviously the unpredictability of the state aid at the moment. But once the budget goes through, they will probably move to discuss that more.
Thank you.
And just another follow-up about the state aid, since it was restored, is that reflected in your budget? You plug that back in?
Yes, so I redid the budget actually today.
Okay.
And reallocated the state aid. We left our expense budget the same. Our expense budget did not change with the aid restoration. It was just how we were funding it. So instead of funding it with a big chunk of reserves, whatever state aid increase we received, we offset that by reducing the reserve use.
And Mr. Lester's pretty savvy in terms of that reserve, because you don't want to continually fund, let's say, salaries with a reserve, because eventually your savings account runs out. So we were really looking at the reserve to plug in the hole this year, and then look to future years to see what we would do. So none of the staffing reductions that we had were restored, even with the aid being restored, because we knew that we wouldn't be able to sustain that over time. Back to Trustee Biondo's point with declining enrollment, et cetera, it would be foolish to bring those positions back for a short amount of time and then eventually cut them anyway.
Yeah.
So really restoring the reserve plan, which is your rainy day fund for the swings that are in there, and some of the outstanding cases that are perhaps, as you discussed, in the future.
Some other districts on Long Island were really facing tough times because they either had no reserves left or they had used it to fund reoccurring items such as salaries, and they also incorporated the 2 years or 3 years of COVID money into their permanent staffing, and that money ran out as well. So in addition to the foundation aid, they were falling off the COVID aid cliff. The restoration of the foundation aid has helped some, but not all, because there's still shortfalls. So I always caution our board to use reserves for one-time only items, such as computers or textbooks or something of that nature, and to be very careful of using it for staffing. Now, the only reason we were going to use it for staffing this year was because we only had 8 weeks to make a decision on what our program would look like, less $1.2 million. So we all agreed it would be worthwhile to use the reserves just that 1 year to give us the time to develop a more cohesive plan on what would be the best use of our funds.
But since it was restored, you don't have to do that now?
Correct.
And
Again, we may have to do it in the future if the governor does change that formula, and it does, to Trustee Biondo's point about declining enrollment, that seems to be on her radar a lot in terms of that formula. So if there is future formula changes, which we expect now to come, we'd have to look at how that would affect the program and what we would need to do with either reserves or other reductions in expenses. You know, where would we have to take that money from? But we are always aware of that. You know, we're always aware of the declining enrollment. It's always on the board's mind. It's always something that we're looking at. We do have to make difficult decisions, and we made difficult decisions with sports teams this year, especially, where a lot of families were not happy about, you know, combining with ComSwag or traveling to Three Village for something. We combine with robotics club right now. We combine, you know, middle school and high school clubs. So we do have those things all the time that are happening with declining enrollment. And it's hard when the program's been away for many, many years in the community and they're used to those services. But those are the difficult conversations the board's already engaged upon. We are reducing sections at the elementary school for the upcoming year, and actually adding a pre-K section. So that's an addition that is because of the increased need of our community with preschoolers. And we do offer a full day program, which not every district has out there. So we are adding one pre-K class, which means next year we'll have 3 full pre-K classes, which we've never had before for full day. So that's a tremendous addition for the community with students who are in that age level.
And to follow up on what Trustee Biondo said about, you know, trying to pull together a community forum, I can express that I've had a lot of feedback from our taxpayer resident base about that, and
As has our board.
very interested in that, and we so interested, in fact, that the village created a school district interactive working group.
And we have some of our teachers on that with Stan, et cetera. So
that I would just, you know, encourage that dialogue to you know, get revved up a little bit under around the conversation of declining enrollment. My perspective is fiscal responsibility more than, you know, the declining enrollment, and building trust with these community members to show that you are listening to them and being fiscally responsible.
I'll bring that board back to the Board of Education. I work at the purview of the board, so I will share those thoughts. Some of them are here. And then I do think, though, if you look at fiscal responsibility, budget to budget, this budget goes up $900,000. That's a very small amount for a $40 million budget. So we are always looking. It's 2%.
What did our budget go up, Stephen? Did our budget go up 900? No. What did our budget go up? Our budget is so much lower than yours.
So percentage-wise, I'm sure, so ours is 2%. I'm sure there's a small percentage there too. But we are always looking to keep that number as low as we can.
And then there was one other thing.
And I'm sorry if I might interrupt. I'll give credit to Ms. Matan, because it was her spearheading bringing BOCES and renting some of our classrooms at the elementary school. So we're also always seeking out other revenue streams. So by renting out 4 classrooms and a couple offices, the district is bringing in over $160,000 annually in rent, which helps, you know, offset the budget as another revenue source, and also provides continued employment for some of our teachers, because some of our teachers are used in that component to teach some of the different areas, some of the specials.
And we charge back BOCES for those employees' salaries.
And then I think my final question, and this is not, it kind of is budget related, but it is also a safety related matter that I think we share. And that is on the outside of the cafeteria of the high school campus, where the students are picked up and dropped off regularly twice a day. And there's a crossing guard there. And it's an I don't even want to say it's an accident waiting to happen, but it's just such a safety issue that we are happy to work with the school district on. I know that there was some effort to work together on curtailing it
Yep,
a
with the
couple of
previous
years ago.
administration, there was some discussion about signage over there in terms of limiting parking. But then it didn't really go anywhere from there. So we're happy to have that conversation. I know Stan had started it with us, and I really would like to involve the building principals who are there all the time and really know those ins and outs of that.
We need a solution for that.
Yeah, and
badly.
I think that we've also done a lot of work with parents in terms of notifying them about what they're supposed to be doing, and some of that is traffic flow over there, et cetera. So,
Yeah.
but we're happy to have that conversation.
And then you have a transportation budget of 2.3 something million, and buses are not used as much as they used to be. So
And I think that's a nationwide thing where many parents are stretched very thin, picking up children, going from one activity to another. Times have certainly changed in that, but the board has discussed in the past about making some changes to transportation limits. That has to be a community vote. Right now, we're full transportation where all students get buses, but that $2 million also contains private parochial transportation that we are mandated to provide. It provides special ed transportation for students that are getting special ed placements outside of the district or going to BOCES technical centers. So it's not just the buses that you see here. There's other transportation involved in that.
right. Okay. Anybody? Would we entertain questions from the public? Okay.
Sure. And I'm sorry, Ms. Smookler. We will have a budget hearing as well on May 14th. So that's also the opportunity for the community to come out and ask other questions of Mr.
Are you doing
Lester.
meet the candidates that night too?
No, Meet the Candidates will be May 8th, and that's with PTSA.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lester, time flies by. A year ago, maybe tonight, I stood here, only you were over there, and I asked you a basic question. So I want to go back to it. What is our cost per pupil now? You gave me a hint the last time.
Well, I didn't give you a hint. I said it can be, the state computes it two different ways. You could just take the overall enrollment and divide it into the budget.
Yeah, so what is that?
I don't have that right in front of me right this second. I'm sure you do. But the way the state calculates it is, can I finish?
Ask people with
Yeah, I know. But the way the state calculates it, they calculate a general ed cost and a special ed cost.
Yes. Okay, in mathematician, I'm not, but the way my division comes out, it's $51,000 a year. I suspect it's more, but I'll leave it at that. It's a very high number per pupil. But what I'd like to get back to is the superintendent brought it up and you were discussing it. There's a group of people that are very, very interested in meeting, but not with just a committee or a meeting. Under Mr. Laux's, we're going to get back together and kind of talk about it. But I think something much more meaningful would be a community forum, maybe even a vote, I don't know, maybe 2 community forums, because I think it's important that we hear from all stakeholders, not just this group of people that have children in the school, perhaps, and have one vested interest, and then people over here that have a wide variety. And I think the best way to do it would be with a forum as opposed to a committee of 8 or 10, because I don't think that would go anywhere. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
just read. All right, I'll talk loud.
Yeah, I think that.
First off, I'd like to
I'm
say,
sorry, I just need your name.
oh, Gail Sternberg, 207 Owasco Drive.
Give me that, please.
I'd like to say, well, it's not on either. This one. Can you hear me? Is this, okay. Speaking for myself, I've been accused of only caring about the money with the school. And it's certainly that is something to think about, how much everything is costing us. But I'm concerned about the quality of the high school. I'm already hearing that our softball team is done, our field hockey, which is how my daughter-in-law got her scholarship to her college, is done. Some of the classes are underattended. Those electives are done. Eventually, the smaller the school gets, the less they'll be offered to our children. And that concerns me. Everybody thinks it's just the money. It's not just the money. It's the quality of the education, the experience socially, athletically, everything. I was president of the Academic Booster Club for 2 years. Academics is very, very ingrained in me that it's important that the school have all the things that the other school has, all the other things our neighboring schools have. You're saying that we're sending some of our kids to other districts. Is that true?
For what?
For sports or?
Yes.
All right, so we're already sending our kids to other districts. And I remember one of the school board members said, I'd die if I saw my kids wearing a letter, a school letter from another school. This is what's important. Most people in Port Jefferson revere education. We would pay for it, but we should have what everybody expects. We don't expect a school to go down to less than 250 kids total in the high school, which is just a couple of years away. And it's not the school district's fault. This is what's happening on Long Island. It's an expensive place to live. There's less people having a lot of children. And we are declining. And I see here, like for instance, you want to put HVAC, this is a wish list item, HVAC in the high school for $10,500,000. Would that be something the people in the village would vote on, or you could just go ahead and do it?
If that was a capital reserve project, which we wouldn't be able to put $10 million in the budget, the community would have to vote on that.
But don't you have restricted funds that you could do for capital improvements?
So the capital reserve is one of those restricted funds, but it does have to be voted on by the community.
So it had to, and also, I remember the 2022 bond had air conditioning and heating for a little less than $4 million. Why is it 10.5 million here?
I don't know in front of me. We do have the breakdown of that figure, but some of it is inflation over time.
6 million?
Some of it was to be done in the bond with other areas that were going to be renovated, so you wouldn't have to do the HVAC twice. You would just have to do the renovation. That would be when the HVAC would be done, and then you would do the HVAC in the other areas that weren't addressed.
All right, well, 6 million is a large increase since 2000.
And it's not on the horizon right now. It's not
That's
on the
your
vote.
wish list, so I was just wondering,
was-
the public would get to decide.
The public always gets to decide with the capital reserve. That was something the Board of Education had asked us to report on, what the cost of HVAC was. And they were considering whether or not to use the capital reserve. At this point, we don't have enough funding in capital reserve. We have about $3 million, as Mr. Lester shared earlier. And so that's not on there. That was something the board asked for us
Okay,
to
because
report
I
on.
do think that we should be very, we should really examine how we're spending money on the high school building if we're unsure we can really populate it. To me, that would be something. The elementary school, and I've been accused of this too, the elementary school, I think we can leave alone. Like you could just have, like you said, less sections if it gets smaller. And the middle school too, there's not so many electives that you can't keep it small. It's just the high school. And I'd like to clear that up because I had a little incident this weekend with a person who doxed my address, figured out what my taxes would be. And I really resent the fact that everybody thinks it's just about the money with me, and it's not. It's really about the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who might have questions for the school district representatives? All right. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I'll meet you in a second.
Are you making it warmer or colder? Okay.
To turn it off.
Okay, we have one more presentation tonight, and that is Andrew Freeling is coming up. Poor Jeff, Director of our Planning Department, who will be giving us a report on our managed parking operation as some changes took place over the last several weeks and months.
Tech has asked me to stand over here. Is that okay? Is this what you want?
All right.
So,
Do you want to bring the podium
excuse
over
my
there?
Back.
Oh, you have a mic.
They
Nice.
gave me a mic.
Nice.
They know I can't stand still.
All
Okay,
right.
so up on the screen, I just have a couple of quick graphics for you to, so you don't stare at me, you can stare at the screen. So this is a progress report on the work being accomplished with respect to the parking management operation. So this is by way of introduction. As you know, there is a new structure for parking management. We have an operational task force now of a high-level staff that's addressing parking needs in the village. At the time of this writing, when I wrote this for tonight's presentation, all the software and hardware programs are running, and the adjustments to the operational details are being made as we're running the programs. If we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Steve. So just looking at some history here, we started out with the formation of the 2024 Parking Committee. We had a report of from the committee chair to the mayor back in February, and the committee chair is here tonight. We also had a report from my office on the revenue impacts from the suggestions of the parking committee, and finally the mayor's letter to the public. And these are all a matter of record that brought us to where we are today. And I'm not going to go into detail on them. You can look at these. They're all exhibits as background, and you can pull them up and look at them. So with regard to an overview, as you all may know, the role of a parking management operation is to govern the availability of convenient, accessible parking. And the way we do that is with the turnover of parking spaces. And parking stall turnover is not the only way, but it's probably the most significant way to guarantee a selection of parking spaces when you come into the village. And the way we make a revolving selection of empty spaces is to use fees to incentivize people to roll over the parking spaces. Go to the next slide, please, Steve. Thank you. So we have about 10 parking lots in the village of Port Jefferson. These are some of them that you may know and love. We also have various other private lots and free parking lots and spaces, street spaces throughout the village as well. One additional lot on Perry Street, which is uptown, is not the subject of this analysis in this report. We also have the Brookhaven Marina and boat ramp parking lots, which we're not going to discuss tonight. They're not part of our parking management program. We also have the beaches and the country club, which we're not going to talk about tonight. We're just talking about the downtown parking management operation. As I indicated, the offices and the departments of the village are coordinating the simplification of messaging, and we'll take a look at that in a second, and uses of the village parking operation. We've met at least a half a dozen times in the past month to arrange and implement the program. If I could have the next slide, please. So one of the first things we tackled was the signage in the village. There have been numerous observations made by folks within and without Village Hall that there, with respect to parking and parking signs, that there's an overabundance of parking signs in the village. Some of the signs are confusing with other signs, and the total number of signs in the village is bordering on visual pollution. So we're tackling our signs. First, by removing some signs. We went through the village and we have removed 156 signs related to parking in the village. So those are being removed or have been removed at this point. We are replacing signage related to parking with as much as 30% to 50% less in the signage managing the parking. So that's our goal, is to reduce the signage on parking. The messaging, as you can see on the board, has been simplified. So all the, while there are still several distinct sign types, depending on the location of the sign, all the signage has been branded and colorized in the Village of Port Jefferson blue and white. And signs emphasize now text to park and provide the former QR code that people have been using as an alternative. And all the managed parking goes from 12 noon to 8 p.m. and that is now on all the signage in the village. There were conflicting times, there were some other conflicting information, but we've smoothed that all over. If I could go to the next slide. We took a look at the meter locations, and everybody has different terminologies for the meters, but there are 24 pay stations or meters throughout the village. This is just not an exact representation of where the meters are. We're protecting the meters in case they're guilty, but so these are not exact locations. But
No doxing the meters.
that's right. So some of the meters are pay stations. So you may hear me talk about meters as being pay stations. Okay, the pay stations have the option to pay by cell. They also have the option to pay by cash. Not all the meters or pay stations are functioning, as you may know. Approximately half of the standing meters or pay stations are non-functioning, and these have been shut down but remain in the lot as information kiosks or stations. Okay. The presence of the non-functioning meter and pay stations has been a source of complaint from users of the parking management program, as they are too like functioning meter pay stations and cause confusion as to their purpose. So you may have experienced walking up to a pay station or a meter, if you will, and realize that you can't pay there. So that has been confusing. As kiosks, they weren't working as well. Next slide. So where we are replacing all the information on the meters, this is an example of what a pay station, or I'm sorry, a kiosk would look like now. In the past, you might have gone to a kiosk and there was stuff stuck all over it, pamphlets and information. Some of the information even on the kiosk itself was a little confusing. So we've simplified the kiosks and the pay stations. This is just a representation of it. So we're down to 12 working meter pay stations. They're programmed to accept payment for the new rates and timing. So we'll get to that in a second. In the next phase of implementation, the number of meter and pay stations that are going to be returned to the parking management operation is to be data-driven. So we are going to be removing a lot of the non-functioning kiosks, if you will, and where we put new ones back, or if we put new ones back, will be based on data that we'll be collecting, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
May I give a shout out at this moment in time
Sure.
to Francine Moshe, our graphic designer, who helped pull together this nice branding package.
That's
She's
right.
like calling me, saying thank you. No, she
Okay.
did a really nice job pulling this together. So that's all.
So like I said, in the short term, one or more of the current meter pay stations may be replaced. Oh, I'm sorry. So we are looking at new meter technology. So in the short run, one or more of these meters may be replaced as we check out and test run new technology. And the information and the data that we get from one or two new meters will also help us in the decision-making process for hardware replacement as we move forward. So let's talk a little bit about data. Thank you. Okay, so it would be difficult to make managed parking operational decisions without empirical data. Derived data is fed into our planning process so that effective and cost-benefit analysis can be made on our operations. The planning process includes study and then implementation of a proposal, analysis of the proposal, and the data that we collect formulates a baseline, or the data that we're collecting now is formulating a baseline for moving forward into the future. And this is just a typical planning process. And as you can see, what's important about it, it is very circular. So we're starting this process where we developed our parking management plan. We're translating our plan into action, which we've been doing to date. All our systems are operating. Everything is working the way it should be at the moment. We take a look and we analyze what's going on through all the data that we're collecting. And the type of data that we could collect, for example, is to monitor parking violations. We had Code here tonight. Code is doing a good job of revamping their parking enforcement and looking at their technology and making sure that their technology is working and functioning properly with their staff. So one way of looking at if our system is running properly is through ticketing. If we look at our data and we see for the last several months that we've issued no ticketing, then our system is working great. It's turning over parking spaces every 2 hours and we don't have an issue. If we look at our data from enforcement, if we're looking for data from enforcement, if we're looking at that and we see a mountain of data, it means that people are not moving out of those spaces, creating available space. So one source of information would be the data that Code is collecting that we are analyzing. Another source is the usage information. We can look at each and every individual pay station and see how much it is collecting in revenue, how often it is being used. So we can look at that data and determine which one of the pay stations out there we don't need, or which one of the kiosks we don't need. So with that data, we can start to look at the movement of people and see how people are moving from the parking lots into pay stations or into Main Street. Revenue. The revenue data that we collect also helps us in determining the programming for procurement of new technology and new capital improvements. So we look at our revenue data as well. We also look at the data and the distribution of free parking passes, and this is also useful in the helping of us managing our parking program. So maybe we can go to the next slide. Okay, so let me wrap up then. Okay, so first of all, I did want to give a shout out to the mayor and her staff. Rita has been very helpful. The clerk's office with Mary, very helpful, thank you. All part of this new team that are working to implement the parking program. Our treasurer's office and Stephen, thank you for everything that he's done. Stephen has been feet on the street, so to speak, and he's actually been out and working with the meters, which is extraordinary for the treasurer's office. DPW, and Steve Gallagher's not here, but I wanted to give a shout out to DPW and their staff because they are part of this initiative as well. Parks is part of the initiative, and you all know Dave. His staff is out there helping with the parking management. Of course, Code is part of this team. My department, Building and Planning, is part of the team as overall. And of course, Elizabeth from the courts, who has been providing us with the data. And Fran as well, helping us with the signage. So in summary then, the 2024 managed parking operation has switched from an autocratic parking administrator oversight to a Village of Port Jefferson operational task force. And this is composed of high-level staff, and we can deploy village resources from our offices and departments, and these offices interact and have the responsibilities related to village parking operations on a daily basis. Okay, all planning processes include study and then implementation of a proposal, analysis of the proposal, that was the other slide, the refinement of the implementation, further analysis, further refinement, and then we repeat that all over again. So parking management is a team effort. We're going to continuously look at parking management, feed our data into what we're doing, and make adjustments and continue to analyze. So this is it's a real-time management system. So the data that we have is brought into our system, and we have a constant input of data and constant analysis, as I just indicated. Okay, so just to conclude then, all the operations have been made towards the opening of the parking management program. All the operations have been in effect as of April 15th, 2024. At the time of this writing, the software, the hardware programs are running. Adjustments to the operational details are being made if necessary at this time. Signs have been homogenized. Timing has been homogenized per the recommendations of the parking committee. So that's really the summary of where we are at this point. If there are questions, I can attempt to, oh, I know what I forgot. We are printing several hundred posters that businesses in the village can put in their window to inform the public as well as other users of the parking system. So these are being made to put in the store windows, and we will also have business cards that business owners can hand out to customers just to help spread the word on our parking management system. And again, it's text to park, where you can scan the QR code, and there's even a number for help if you need help.
And just to add to that note, the reason that that is happening is because a lot of times people walk into a store front or a restaurant and forgot to pay for their parking. And so typically they'd say, I have to run back out and get my license plate number and go scan scan the kiosk or the signage. But we're making it possible for it to happen in real time in the place where they're doing their business.
Thank you.
So the village is providing these resources to the merchants.
I apologize for my back.
I also want to give a shout out to the parking committee, which you did in the beginning and you're doing again, but the chairman's sitting in the audience tonight, and I wanted to recognize James Luciano for all the work that he's been doing on this in this effort, and the other members of the parking committee have been very helpful and continue to be helpful. We're continuing to meet, and indeed we will be moving the parking committee out from under the auspices of the bid operation, the Business Improvement District, and back into reporting into the village. So I think everybody's on board with that, and it's a strong move. And I see, a very fluid operation that can change as needed. Treasurer Gafka, can I ask you a question? So in terms of revenue, do we have a percentage of where we are this year over where we were last year or the year before at this time?
Well, last year, the parking opened April 1st, so we started on the 15th, so 15 days later. But comparatively to the same week and a half last year to this year, we're up 45% in revenue.
Wow. Okay.
On about 400 less transactions on 5,000 total transactions.
Oh, okay. I wonder, that doesn't make any sense.
Reading glitch.
But sounds great. I believe you. I do believe you. It's good. The treasurer's keeping track of this, the numbers like in real time every single day. So I do trust those numbers, and I'm happy about that.
Just to better understand, that's this week last year versus this week this year.
Correct. The
So-
third week of April of 23 versus the third week of April of 24, and then the first 3 days of the fourth week.
Got it. So probably weather related.
I think that's a part of it, when the weather.
Do we have the
changes.
weather forecast on the days last
Come
year?
on, Steve.
I
that
don't
we-
have that.
Uh-huh. We're also experiencing, it's a spring break for the local schools. So, but that happened also during this
It was
time
the
frame.
same week last year.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I also want to commend the parking committee and all the this work that's been done. Definitely uniform signage, both visually and being a constructive move as far as helping people do the right thing and not end up with a ticket. But then, sorry, I'm seeing a head shaking over here.
I think he's gonna write you a
Sit on that. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. We saved the process. And so I did notice that the metered parking ends at 8 p.m. I'll be curious to see what the data comes back with there, and would hope that perhaps the parking committee, after it's taken a breath after all of this work, can take a look at long-term projects that are projected for our parking lots the maintenance of parking lots, if there's any changes. I know with a lot of the climate resiliency and stormwater projects, parking lots are a huge opportunity for the retention, collection, management of our stormwater. And so I would hope to see it's not like we want to be milking our visitors for parking fees, but these parking lots are something that are utilized by the wonderful people who visit our village. And so for them to pay to use them, maintain them, and also help us as taxpayers offset the costs of maintaining and improving the parking lots, not just as parking lots, but as part of the infrastructure and the system of the village. So I would love to see sort of the projection of different projects coming up, working with the treasurer, seeing how much those might be projected to cost, and then looking at maybe the next year's parking income projection, seeing how long is it going to take to build up those funds, and again really try to offset that taxpayer cost for those improvements.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I have a question.
Okay.
We've moved away from the stickers. We're reading license plates.
Yes.
Yearly, 2 years.
I think that's the future of parking management is license plate readers. And
Are we going to have to renew 1 year, 2 years?
oh, I'm sorry, I
For
didn't know what
the
you meant.
residents?
I think the renewal for residents for I think it's yearly. Right. Did you
So
catch that?
the
far?
first year of implementation was last year.
Yes.
And for residents who enrolled and signed up and got their permit last year, they have another year that they don't have to. Renters every year have to. And
Going forward, 1 year.
Every,
I think
That's
that
always
it
been-
it always was. It always was. Yeah, you always had to apply every year as a renter. But residents every 2 years, every other year. And then merchants. So there was some with the license plate reader program. What we noticed in the data was that merchants were receiving multiple permits,
Right.
because in the past they received a medallion or a hang tag for their car, so that could be transferred from one employee to another. And with the license plate reader program, that was problematic. So I guess the village decided, I didn't know this was a decision, but I guess the village decided to give more than one license plate a permit per merchant, depending on who asked and how they asked.
Right.
That was in the past.
Right.
Now, what we're doing is we're going back to the hang tags so that the merchants can manage who in their business does receive a hang tag, and they can transfer from employee to employee or self to employee. And then another tactic that is being utilized as recommended by the parking committee is that there are certain areas that are restricting the amount of time you can park in certain areas by 2 hours. So those areas will be geo-zoned, I guess, fenced.
That's right.
We're talking to the bid and the chamber to see which areas and which parking spaces that will apply to, because that's an important detail that we need to be able to communicate to code and to the people who are parking there. So anyway, I answered more than your question, Stan, but that was the merchant hang tags are a very important part of the process as well. And village employee hang tags. A lot of village employees were receiving 3 and 4 permits per plate, like one per plate, but for 3 or 4 cars. So there was a lot of permits out there that were, more than one per employee. So we're going back to the hang tags for employees as well.
And we're going to monitor that data as well to see if that's
Correct.
working. We may have to switch to a different system in the future. Don't know.
And we may not.
And we may not.
Any other questions?
I have a question. What's the hourly fee now?
Right now, it's been set at $1.50.
$1.50. It was $1 last year, right?
I think it was $1 last year.
So maybe that's,
Depended on where you were in the village.
Monday through Thursday was $1 an hour, and then Friday through Sunday was $1.50.
so maybe that's the reason why.
I think the
We've
average transaction
gotten more.
is a little higher right now. That'll probably change, probably because of the weather. They come and they want to stay. So the average transaction is a little higher. It's closer to about 3 hours. When it goes higher than 3 hours, you're going to get more money per for transactions.
Sure.
When it goes less, bad weather, you probably have that'll go down.
And is there any thought to doing a one fee you pay, $5, $7, something like that for all day or a certain amount of hours instead of saying, okay, only gonna be here for 2 hours, or maybe I'm gonna be here 3 hours, pay like a $5 fee or something like that.
Yeah, an all-day fee. We had discussed it, but we pushed that off for a later discussion based on data that we're getting, things like that.
You can enter, and in the meters, you can enter how many hours you want to stay, and you'll be charged for that. So
Honk
it's
Mobile as
possible.
well.
Yeah, Hunk Mobile.
Yeah, you can go up to on Honk Mobile. You can go up to 24 hours. You can select that at $1.50 an hour.
Good, thank you.
I would just say that we're not trying to encourage long-term parking, though, right? So to give somebody a discount for long-term parking or to, so we talked about it a little bit, but move that discussion for a later date. Can you bring up the next slide real quick? So the future of parking, some of you might have seen this flow chart before in various different terms, but right now, we're only looking at downtown programmatic issues, and we probably only hit the first couple of issues in the downtown. So the parking committee is going to continue, and we're going to continue to address the issues in downtown, but we're also moving over to uptown, and then we have the country club, and we've got a couple other places. This is an older slide. I just wanted to bring it up for an example. So parking management in the entire village is rather complicated, and we've only focused in the last couple of months on some issues in the downtown. And we're going to continue to look at issues in the downtown and continue to do that. But as the parking committee continues to meet, eventually we're going to go to other parts of the town and bring the whole parking management program all together. And that's my last slide. You don't have to leave that up.
All right,
it's not
so
accurate.
we're going into public comment right after this, Ryan. So anyone who has questions about parking can raise them. Yeah. All right. Andrew Freeling, thank you very much.
Thank you. Turn this off before anybody says anything.
Before we go into that public
Turn it.
comment, public to address the Board of Trustees section, we have a public hearing that we'd like to open, right? So we need a motion to open the public hearing regarding a proposed local law amending Chapter 25, Country Club Management Advisory Council of the Code of the Village of Port Jefferson.
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Attorney Moran, would you like to talk about this local law change, or do you want me to?
You give us the bones of that code amendment, you probably best have to speak to him as the scrivener.
Okay. Please interrupt if I go off cue. And so this is a local law that exists already. It is Chapter 25 of the Village Code. It established the Country Club Management Advisory Council back, I believe, in the 1970s. And it's been changed a few times, and this is a proposal for it to be changed one more time, for the board to vote on this change, which we've discussed in the work sessions. But what has occurred is, at the end of the year last year, the Port Jefferson Country Club had elected a board of governors it reenacted the Board of Governors for golf at the country club, which was deactivated several years ago. And so the reference to the Board of Governors, of which the president thereof has an automatic appointment to had an automatic appointment to the CCMAC. As when the Board of Governors was deactivated, that code changed to not acknowledge that the president of the Board of Governors for golf was an automatic appointment to the CCMAC. So that was the constitution of the advisory council there. So with that said, the new Board of Governors, an elected group, is now reinstated, and so therefore we must change the code again because it should also go back to reflect that the president of that Board of Governors, who is also elected by the members of the Board of Governors, is to be automatically appointed to the CCMAC. That's one aspect of the code change. Another aspect of the code amendment is that instead of having 11 people on the CCMAC, which seemed to be quite a few representatives, it was determined after resignations and attrition that we were able to scale back that CCMAC to 7 members, which is more, I guess it's easier to work with a smaller group for that body. And so those 7 members who are recognized board members, one is automatically appointed as the president of the Tennis Association, one is automatically appointed as the president of the Golf Association, and then the Board of Trustees has 5 appointments, one of whom is a non-member resident required, and another whom is a non-resident member. Golf or tennis? A non-member resident and number 1 and a non-resident member, okay? And that's how it's always been. That's not a change, but what's changed is the number. So the board then has those 2 appointments and then 3 additional appointments. So that is the nature of the change. So we've had a lot of resignations. There's no one that needs to actually be removed from that board, which would not be our right to do so anyway, but we've had some resignations, so we've been able to scale that board into a 7-person board. And I think Mayor, the
only thing you left out is with an 11-member board, each of the 11 members had a assigned duty to the board, so we amended the code to reduce some of those job duties to fit in a 7-member board other than an 11.
All right, so those include an elected chairperson of the CCMAC and volunteer recording secretary and a volunteer vice chair. So from the existing members. So that's the other change. Thank you for reminding me about that. Okay. Any questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Since we do not have a tennis association at the present time, my question would be, who takes that position on the CCMAC? That's one question. Another question, your non-resident member, is it limited to 1?
Oh, correct. That's a good
Because-
point, Stan. The majority cannot be non-residents. It cannot be a non-resident majority.
Okay.
I don't know if that was your question, but that was a point that I felt that it was important to.
Yes, it is important because I think later on we're going to approve a non-resident as a member of the CCMAC, and we already have a non-resident member of the CCMAC.
Right, so that's why I state that it cannot be a majority.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So for a long time, the Tennis Association president was a non-resident.
For the
So
last
it's
4.
precedent, yeah, many years. And then, yeah, so,
So what do we do with the tennis? That's my
yeah,
question.
so, the CCMAC chair will be working through the tennis organizational aspect. The now former president of the Tennis Association will no longer be on the CCMAC as of now, and the Tennis Association will have to decide and vote on a president moving forward. But there is no active tennis membership right now, so
Right.
it's not an urgent issue. Good questions.
It's a good move. I worked with 11 CCMAC members, and it's a too big a number to work with. 7 is a good number.
Okay, thank you, Stan. All right. Now, do we have a motion? Any other questions? Any other discussion? All right. So do we have a motion to close the public portion? Oh, no. Okay, so we have to open it to the public. We are now opening this up to public comment. Any public questions, please step forward because it is a public hearing.
Here we go. I apologize, Mr. Lowry, because earlier I was talking about committees and getting together to create a forum, and I did not acknowledge that Mr. Laux is the liaison between the trustees and the school district. And he did it,
Specific to this local law that we're amending.
no, I thought you opened it.
Not yet, not yet.
Sorry, Stan, I'm gonna leave.
This is, yeah. This is specific to the CCMAC, Chapter 25 of the code.
Wanted to apologize.
We'll give you time for that.
No, I'm leaving.
Any other questions about the CCMAC? Country Club Management Advisory Council? Okay, hearing none.
Move to close.
Thank you. A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And now we need a motion adopting the proposed local law as attached, amending Chapter 25, Country Club Management Advisory Council of the Code of the Village of Port Jefferson. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Okay, Stan Laux, second.
Second.
Okay, Drew Biondo, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. And now, what you've all been waiting for, time for the public to address the Board of Trustees.
All I want to do is say, I'm sorry for not acknowledging Mr. Laux has tried with 2 meetings. I think you're going to have to try harder. I will too. Because I really do think it's important that be a meaningful liaison between the village trustees and the school district. Because we have problems, and I think as a community we can solve them. But sorry for not saying that before.
Barbara Sabatino. Okay, Trustee Laux, I had spoken to a neighbor who has a child in the high school and about the parking problem on Old Post Road. And she thought that contributing to that problem was the fact that parents won't go through the semicircle in front of the high school anymore, because if you pass a parked bus, their cameras are going and they're getting tickets. So she kind of indicated maybe if they solved that, it would decrease the amount of people on Liberty and Old Post Road. The kayak racks, are they residents only, or can non-residential people rent them?
In past years, it's been strictly residents. We've reached a point now where there's quite a few open kayak racks. Maybe the board could consider opening it up to the non-resident.
Well, we just like for the community garden, we had set a resident rate for beds and then a non-resident rate. as well. So that's just something to consider in that conversation.
Okay, thank you. These construction companies, whether they're utilities or something else, use different color spray paints to mark the streets. And whoever uses Barbie pink, a real hot pink, went down Station Street
Yep.
and sprayed and hit the brand new black lanterns.
I was walking there, yep, I saw
Yep.
that. I was walking there the other day and I saw that.
So, and I was watching the guy and he did not care, but, you know, if somebody can get a little tin of glossy black paint and paint over it, because what a shame, brand new lantern. Okay, Mayor Shepro, you had mentioned, I watched it online in the trustees report, that there's a new maintenance company cleaning, and you had said something about flies on the windowsills. Could you please, are they already working?
We haven't issued the RFP yet.
Oh, okay. Whoever is in charge, could you please tell them that they need to rehang these curtains? Because it kind of looks sloppy.
That's a different item.
Oh, that's a different item.
hold on.
Okay.
We have a grant. Our Justice Court receives 2 grants a year. The most recent grant that they received, and if you have more information, Stephen, you can mention it. But yeah, they have the last application they put in was to sort of redo the court in decor. So that means new curtains, it means new paint job, and quite a few things. So
Okay.
yeah, we know.
Yeah, oh, okay.
We know.
You know, and now we're on camera, so.
I know. It just, yeah.
Okay, so.
Very distressing.
If my mother was still alive. And then the other thing I wanted to say was on the parking. 2 of my questions were answered. I do want to reiterate what you said about the graphics on Scan to Park. They're beautiful. They're the right color. The text is very clean, very easy to read. Whoever did it did a wonderful job. And I agree with Bob Giuliano that the price did go up because my sister said, oh, I parked downtown and it cost me $3.50 or something like that for parking for 2 hours. I'm going, that doesn't sound right. But of course, I'm like old and I'm thinking about 50 cents an hour. How long ago was that? And then and will there still be kiosks or parking meters that you can put money in for we old people who don't want to use a smartphone?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you all.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ryan Walker, 721 Pine Tree Court. My comments and questions are about the parking. Our goal, I want to first say thank you for that presentation, very enlightening, and I'm glad that we're using the plate reader to garner a lot of data, because it will be interesting to see just who's parking downtown and for how long and where, because we want to make sure for our merchants that there's a high turnover in these parking spots so that we can get people in and let them experience our downtown, and then let the next people in and experience the downtown. Residents have places that they can be parking. Employees should be parking in a spot that really shouldn't take the spots of those who are going to come in from out of town, or even residents that come in for short stays, to help our merchants downtown. And I hope that's the focus of our parking, is to get the turnover as high as possible and not have people like park there all weekend, because they happen to live close by and they have an extra car they need to park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Velasquez, 208 East Broadway. Since you were talking about parking, I just wanted to bring up a couple different things that I felt would be important for the trustees and the mayor to know. There are a lot of employees and in the village, and there should be some consideration for employees where they're going to park and rates of that nature. Secondly, parking as far as like the larger buildings that are in our community, I think that should be the parking situation of inside the buildings should be reevaluated, because a lot of those buildings, the residents wind up parking outside the building. They park in our parking facilities and throughout the village, and even uptown with the new buildings going on there. They're either parking in Long Island Railroad parking or other areas. Last off two more things on parking. Sorry for so many things, but parking uptown, as it was removed from the main streets, it wound up doing a detrimental harm to those businesses that relied on commuter traffic coming in and going quickly. I would like to see that possibly where they took down the old diner, that possibly parking could be established in that area and allowed a revitalization of parking up there and creation of new businesses. Last off on parking, last year at the on July 4th weekend at the Country Club, there was construction being done on the retaining wall area by the tennis courts. That area there, the parking up there, was taken up by trucks and parking, so people could not enjoy the fireworks. And they really should, relocate all those trucks at that, whenever these events happen, to an outside area, because that was a good 25 spots that were taken up. And I think that also for better enjoyment of the populace in our community, that the golf carts should be moved from that area as well, so that people can sit or stand there and watch the fireworks. Just some ideas.
I just want to address the trucks that were there, the construction trucks. They were not from the bluff. They were from contractors that were working on the replacement lines in the roadways, and they did not have permission to be parking there. So
Okay.
your point is well taken, and I was not happy about that either. So
Thank you for noticing that. Last off, I realize it's tight times, and we really are budget conscious, but I just want to go back and reiterate something that happened many years ago. 30 years ago, or 30 plus years ago, a site on this in this village became available. It was a tax-paying entity to the village, and the board, the then mayor and the board of trustees came forward and purchased that land with the help of local politicians, and that's the village center. That removed tax dollars that was going to us in this village. There is the possibility of the Maryhaven property that's up on the top of the hill, and I really think that it should be investigated more than it currently is. That property currently pays zero taxes. If it's acquired by this village, it still pays zero taxes. If another entity gets that property, we will probably never see taxes in 20 years. It takes very long for us to get any taxes. We can see it with these other buildings. But we will pay for the sewage, treatment of it, which I have no idea what it costs per gallon, but it could be quite considerable. And I would like to see us possibly one day purchase that property, because the the benefits are so big for this community. As this village gets bigger and bigger, we need extra spaces. And that has the potential that no other spot in this village has. It has acres and acres of land. Tennis courts can be relocated there. The ground is fairly level. Could be ADA compliant. It's a historic building, the Wharton House. If an outside contractor gets that property, will anybody in this room ever see it? I doubt it. They will never see that building. We never see it now. It has the potential to be a buildings and ground building, an annex for the fire department. So much good could be done for this community and all the people here. And I really feel that you should look into that much further than it currently is. If by chance an annex for the fire department is created up there, there's 2 houses that the fire department has across the street. Possibly, maybe they would be willing to give those back to the tax roll, creating some tax for the people of this community. I could go on, but there's many people here who would like to continue to talk and weigh in on various issues, but those are ones that I feel are important, and I really want to just come up and thank all of you for the tremendous job you do sitting here and listening to us, and especially to DPW, who has I feel they've done a terrific job. The roads and everything are looking great, and I don't know if DPW was enacted to put up the barriers to prevent somebody from actually drowning. This year was terrific. So thank you again for all of your time.
Thank you. That's the town of Brookhaven. Let's give a great shout out to the town of Brookhaven for putting those barriers up and changing that access point.
Town of Brookhaven.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was really happy to work with Ed Morris and Councilmember Cornreich on that when I heard that project was coming up, with the revamping of that parking lot, they said, well, has the village seen plans? And they said no. So we got the plans and was able to point out, hey, there's this liability, that people have died because of this opening. And I was frankly shocked to see that the town hadn't included a redesign of that. So they were able to put that in, and we were also able to add more green strips in the parking lot so that it wasn't just a sea of asphalt, that it had bioswales and rain gardens. So visually it's a little less daunting for the folks living on Beach Street, but also can filter out some of the water that's there. So it was a good collaboration, and hopefully that's an effective little bump out and really saves lives.
There's a lot of interest, Trustee Cassay, in what's going on over there. You've been holding out on us.
I've not been asked.
Is that what it takes?
No.
Okay, we're going to ask you to present on that. No, I think we'd like to see the town's plans for that and have it presented here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you seem to have the inside track. So can you?
Eddie Morris.
Thank you. Any other public comments today? Yes.
Ginny Grinsky, 2 Rosie Lane. Good evening. I want to follow on with what Steve was saying about the Maryhaven property. It seems to be in a quiet period right now. I've not heard anything about any movement on a developer, closing on it. But if you recall when the developer was here, who was considering putting up condos or apartments, I had asked him, I caught him out in the hall, and I asked him what kind of density surveys he had done, safety surveys he had done, environmental impacts he had done, and I didn't get the sense that he was planning on doing any. Right. And so I explained to him that typically in a project like that, that's part of the cost of the builder. And so I'm hopeful that this board will encourage, get involved and encourage that to be done before anything is approved going forward. So that's one. The second thing I wanted to say is, for those of you who know me, you know I am, into data. So I could not be happier to have heard, Andy, your presentation, and I'm thrilled. And it's a trend that I'm just seeing. I mean, first in my exposure working with Stephen, and seeing that sort of ripple through the Department of Public Works. Thank you for what you're doing.
Can't take credit, it's a team effort, we have the direction.
Well, I'm grateful as a resident. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
I'm not used to brevity, but I'm going to try to exercise it now. I couldn't resist because, first of all, we're talking about parking, which is welcomed. Then we're talking about the firehouse, which I have in my heart, I want us to find a new location. Has anyone ever considered, if we find a new location for the firehouse, maybe the existing location could then be turned into a parking structure? We don't want to use parking garage. Parking structure is the better word. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Basically, you're getting out of there because it floods.
Bioswales. Okay, any other public comment tonight? All right, thank you very much. On to the agenda items, and turning it over to Deputy Clerk Mary Pelton.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 1, resolution approving the minutes of the March 27th and April 10th, 2024 meetings of the Board of Trustees. Can I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2, resolution appointing the following as election inspectors for the June 18th, 2024 village general election at a pay rate of $18 per hour. Kevin Collins, Jillian Dexter, Veronica McGarry, John Mancuso, Barbara Sabatino, Louise Sinisi, Konstantin Shestakov, and Christine Van Riper. Can I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Resolution 3, resolution appointing the following as alternate election inspectors for the June 18th, 2024 village general election at a pay rate of $18 per hour. Deborah Sommerfeld and Marlon Evangelista. Can I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 4, resolution approving the provision of translation services by independent contractor Sandra Ramos Connor at a cost of $500 for the required translation from English to Spanish of forms and documents related to the June 18th, 2024 village general election. Can I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 5, resolution hiring independent contractor Lisa Matto as grant writer, grant administrator at an hourly rate of $100 per hour, not to exceed 28 hours per month, and authorizing Mayor Shepro to sign the agreement between the Village of Port Jefferson and Lisa Matos. Can I have a motion?
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Just a typographical correction on the end of that sentence. It's Matto.
Thank you. Resolution 6, resolution accepting with regret the resignation of Todd Garland from the Port Jeff CCMAC effective April 1st, 2024. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
We have a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 7, resolution appointing James Burke to the Port Jeff CCMAC as a replacement for Todd Garland for a term to expire in June 2026. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. By the way, James Burke becomes the non-member resident representative on the CCMAC.
Resolution 8, appointing Michael Lomello to the Port Jeff CCMAC for a term to coincide and expire upon the change of term as president of the PJCC Golf Board of Governors. Can I have a motion?
Motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 9, resolution approving an increase in the annual salary of Senior Office Assistant Michelle Keenan from $44,598.35 per year to $49,976.74 per year, effective May 2nd, 2024, owing to the performance of additional duties. Can I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 10, resolution approving the hiring of part-time seasonal employees at the Village of Port Jefferson Country Club per the attached memorandum dated March 24th, 2024 from Golf Pro Jake Anderson. Can I have a motion?
Motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 11, resolution approving at the request of Chief Owen the hiring of the following part-time Code Enforcement Bureau officers effective May 13th, 2024. Syed Khan, parking meter officer, $18.31 per hour. Ryan Pfister, parking meter officer, $18.31 per hour. William Sander, parking meter officer, $18.31 per hour. And Richard Raheb, code enforcement officer, $20.90 per hour. Can I have a motion?
Motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 12, resolution approving the removal of the flashing cautionary traffic signal at the intersection of Old Post Road West and Liberty Avenue, owing to the addition of a third stop sign at the intersection of westbound Liberty Avenue and Old Post Road West. Motion?
Motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this?
The only concern I had about this is that because it's on a hill, the flashing light, sort of when coming up, might be a little bit more visible. So I just didn't know if we did any kind of analysis, if there was, I wasn't privy to any discussion about this. So I just want to make sure that it went through, I don't know, the planning board where we have a traffic expert or someone who would better determine than us as non-traffic experts if there's any downside to removing this.
Well,
Flashing going up the hill? I thought
It's-
it's only over half of the road.
so there is a red flash at facing Willis, and I believe there's a red flashing light when you're going eastbound onto Liberty. And then it's a yellow light, flashing light, I believe, when you're going westbound. I think that was prior to the stop sign being installed. It was, considered dangerous to have no stop sign there and just because it needed to be a three-way stop. So part of the reason why we're looking at this is because that light is malfunctioning, and it's going to cost a bit of coin to get it fixed.
Sure.
And
Is the light and stop sign at the same location?
yes,
And yellow means something different.
Right.
Flashing yellow means yield
yes,
as opposed to a stop, a caution. as
Yes.
opposed to a stop sign means stop. And conflicting.
no. So yes, good catch. They corrected it to be red at every point, but there's three stop signs, so it's redundant. And
I don't disagree. I'm just trying to, sometimes when something's there, you don't realize a benefit to it being there until it's removed. So I just
it's really broken and needs to be replaced. If it's going to be fixed, it would, cost taxpayers a bit of money. And we have a three-way stop sign, and that is, I mean, we didn't necessarily do a study, which would also probably, I don't know if we ran it past the planning board,
but
Yeah, I mean, and that's what all I'd be curious, because again, we have wonderful residents who have um, traffic engineering experience, and if it's as quick of a conversation as, hey, what do you think about this situation? Go look at it. And if they say, nope, there's no benefit to having this here, then absolutely. I'm always slow to move on something that hasn't sort of gone through expertise and not necessarily paying for a study expertise. I don't oppose this, but I might suggest just tabling it to the next meeting to run that conversation past folks at planning.
I don't know if this is
I'd
any
like
help.
to add a little bit to that. Based upon that blinking red light on Main Street down here, people tend to stop more for a blinking red light. I see people going through stop signs every day. I think the blinking red light is much more effective than a stop sign. That's just my observation.
even one that doesn't work well.
Well, if it doesn't work, it's not going to work.
So, do one of you want to take the lead on working with the planning board chair, who has the expertise in the traffic studies and traffic engineering, to do that and come back to us
Yeah,
and
we can
report on it?
come back to this, yeah.
Okay. See, one of you could take that on, and then we'll table it. So,
Very good. So motion to table resolution number 12.
do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thanks. Yeah. We'll get back ASAP.
It was
12.
12.
It was part of the,
12.
Okay. It was 12. Yeah, if you
It's
printed
probably
that up
of
off
the code
offline, then
officers.
it was changed, revised. All right, Mary?
Thank you. Resolution 13. Resolution approving a 5-year extension of the attached IMA between the town of Brookhaven, the village of Belterre, the village of Oldfield, village of Poquat, and the village of Port Jefferson regarding the Port Jefferson Harbor Commission, with the extension to be effective through May 15th, 2029. Can I have a motion?
motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 14, resolution awarding the contract for the provision of capital asset valuation services to the lowest bidder, Witham Smith and Brown, PC, at the bid price of $16,900 per the bid opening on March 15th, 2024. Motion?
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Which one are you seconding? Let's go.
Go ahead.
Okay. All in favor?
Discussion?
Do we have a discussion?
I just want to check, Stephen, you've vetted this company?
Yes. Yes, look through all 3 of the responses, and this company, and also being the lowest bidder, their presentation of how they plan to do this project was the best as well. So I think it's a win on all fronts.
Thank you.
And is there, there was some discussion initially when we talked about doing this that our insurance companies might help cover the cost. Has that been explored at all?
No.
Okay.
No, but the information that we have can be provided to the insurance company, which may then help offset some costs depending on what is determined as our capital valuation.
Great. Thank you.
We have to vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 15, resolution scheduling a public hearing for 6 p.m. on May 29th, 2024 at Port Jeff Village Hall, 121 West Broadway, New York, 11777, regarding a proposed local law amending Chapter 161 Housing, Article 6, Property Maintenance of the Code of the Village of Port Jefferson. Can I have a motion?
I make the motion?
For the board's edification, that's the bamboo restriction.
Yep.
We're scheduling the public hearing of it, right? And then, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 16, a resolution scheduling a public hearing on May 29, 2024 at 6 PM to consider a change of zone for property located at Sheldrake Avenue, SCTM 02060007000100006001 from MW1.
Can you repeat that?
Marine Waterfront District to RB2 Single Family Residence District in accordance with the stipulation of Settlement Index Number 11-08199, Supreme Court of the State of New York, Suffolk County, January 24, 2017.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Do we have a second? Mm-hmm.
For the board's edification, this dates back, the 11 in the index number reference 2011. This was part of a Supreme Court stipulation of settlement over the use of this property, wherein the village of Port Jeff was directed by the Supreme Court to issue the change of zone.
Can you use the microphone?
To issue the change of zone pursuant to Chapter 250-53, which requires a public hearing. So the requirements requiring the public hearing are necessary to fulfill the so worded stipulation from the Supreme Court, and the outcome of that public hearing has been predetermined as an approval pursuant to the Supreme Court. But we have to follow the protocol.
Dave, do you know where the property is?
I do not. I know it's Suffolk County Tax Map 02.
Thank you.
I believe it's Northville.
It's north.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sheldrake. Yeah.
Oh, that empty property there? Okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 17, resolution adopting the fiscal year 2024-25 modified tentative budget dated April 4, 2024 as proposed. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 18,
Oh, I wanted to.
resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget amendment number 26, increasing revenue for the corresponding general fund revenue accounts by a total of $244,664 and increasing appropriations for the line item for medical and dental benefits in the amount of $244,664 and requesting the budget amendment number 26 to be included as part of the meeting minutes of the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees. Can I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Oh, boy. Resolution 19. Resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget amendment number 27, increasing capital fund revenue line item H.5031.000 interfund transfer by $21,006.21 and increasing capital fund expense line item H.7110.210 parks capital improvement and repair by $21,006.21 for the repair of rocket ship park equipment and surface, and requesting that the budget amendment number 27 be included as part of the minute meetings for the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 20, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget amendment number 28, increasing capital fund revenue line item H.3021.000 state aid court grant by $17,413.76 and increasing capital fund expense line item H.1110.205 capital court village court capital improvement JCAP by $17,413.76 for capital improvements to the village court, and requesting that budget amendment number 28 be included as part of the minute meetings of the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
I'll just say that's the question that Barbara Sabatino asked us about, and that's the grant that we are appropriating for repairs and
Curtains.
decor to the courtroom. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, it's a very specific set of decor, not to be, we can't supplement with anything, just have to follow that application to the T. Oh, motion carries.
Thank you. Resolution 21, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget amendment number 29, increasing capital fund revenue line item H.3089.000, other government aid by $49,000, and increasing capital fund expense line item H.8997.594, tennis court bathrooms by $49,000, and requesting the budget amendment number 29 be included as part of the meeting minutes for the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees. Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 22, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget transfer number 3, transferring appropriations to correct over budget accounts within the general fund, and requesting that budget transfer number 3 be included as part of the meeting minutes of the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees. Can I have a motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 23, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget transfer number 4, transferring appropriations to correct over budget accounts within the PJCC fund, and requesting that budget transfer number 4 be included as part of the formal meeting minutes of the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Discussion? I have a question for the treasurer. Can you please explain that to us?
So we have some over budget accounts, both in general and in the country club fund. And what we need to do is cover those over budget accounts so that you don't go into the end of the year with negative expense balances. That happens for a variety of reasons. You can have some of your liability expenses can increase more than you thought. Your electric bills can increase. And there could be some crossover with some procurement procedures that may have been a little lax that allowed certain expenses to pull the lines above what they should have been. So what these budget transfers do is they zero those lines out as of today.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion does motion carry? Did you say aye? Okay.
Resolution 24, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to perform attached budget transfer number 5, decreasing appropriations in expense line item A.9950.900 interfund transfer, and increasing appropriations in line item A.8140.400 storm sewer expenses, and requesting that budget transfer number 5 be included as part of the meeting minutes of the April 24, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees. Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 25, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to create a new capital fund expense account, line item H.1110.205, Village Court Capital Improvement JCAP. Motion?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 26, resolution authorizing Treasurer Gafka to create a new capital fund expense account, line item H.7110.210, Parks Capital Improvement and Repair. Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 27, resolution approving the check register and warrants dated April 22nd, 2024, as presented by Treasurer Gafka and as approved by Claims Auditor Goodwin. Motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Resolution 28, resolution to enter into exec to discuss a contract issue. Can I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we'll be back. Great, thank you. We're back, and do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I believe we have an add-on resolution.
Yeah, well, ask for a motion adding on resolution number 29. Said resolution to authorize the mayor to execute all documents in furtherance of a Westlaw contract that has been renegotiated at a tune of $248 a month.
Motion?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That's saving us over $500 a month, is that what it is?
It's just about $500 a month for 2 years.
For 2 years, so that's just about, if I do the math really quickly, it's like $12,000
Give or take.
plus? Great, thank you so much, Attorney Moran.
So can we take some of that money and buy a new vacuum?
Maybe chairs in the boardroom.
Yeah.
It has to be used.
Yeah. All right, enough. Inside baseball. Okay, now, any other motions?
To close?
One more.
Yep, Resolution 30, resolution to close the April 24th, 2024 meeting of the Board of Trustees at, where's my,
9:10.
9:10
9:09.
PM.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You're gonna feed me that wording, blah, 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 blah. Okay.